An ancient, unidentified group of pirates, generically referred to as the Sea People, were possibly the first to inhabit the Fertile Crescent, more than 6,000 years ago. If so, they predated the Assyrian, Akkadian, and Babylonian empires by several millennia. Even the unique and mighty Sumerian civilization, who are often associated with being the first to settle the Mesopotamian lands, were possibly descendants of these mysterious sea-dwelling warriors. Where they originated from, or their ethnic genealogy, historians could not agree. One running theory was that they were a mixed confederation of Philistine and other hunter-gatherer nomad peoples without a geographic location to call their own. Whatever the truth is, the Sea People were greatly feared by Egyptian pharaohs, the Etruscans, the island nation of Crete, Minos, and numerous Mediterranean civilizations. It's not hyperbole to say these fierce mariners and their devastating inland raids were largely responsible for the Bronze Age collapse. During their 1177 BCE invasion of Egypt, they looted and pillaged the thriving kingdom of Ramses III, and then returned back to their unknown watery territory unscathed. The pharaoh's fortress temple, Medinet Habu, lay in ruins. Plato also wrote about their superior warships and unusual battle armor. When the horde attacked the prosperous port city of Ugarit soon afterward, their ruler attempted to send a distress letter to the reigning king of Cyprus, advising him of the ongoing invasion and pleading for help. Sadly, the urgent message was never sent. Its clay tablet was found burned in the ruins. Ugarit was completely destroyed and razed to the ground. For several centuries, the powerful union of nationless pirates targeted and destroyed vulnerable neighbors all along the Mediterranean coast, without reservation or mercy. Then after decimating each target, they simply returned back to their marine homeland and entered an inactive phase of quiet anonymity. Eventually, these unrelenting terror campaigns and devastating raids led to the irreparable collapse of many once prosperous empires and civilizations. For interesting documented events which transpired more than 2.5 millennia ago, you might assume this lesson in ancient history is purely academic or a matter of bygone record. That's where you would be wrong. You see, those same deadly vessels of yore returned less than a month ago to the eastern seaboard and beaches of North America. Baffled witnesses along the sandy coastline wondered if the thousands of ancient wooden warships were part of an epic movie being filmed or a historic seafaring enthusiast club. The bloody truth soon emerged. It wasn't a dramatic reenactment of times long past. It was the sudden reemergence of a deadly foe. Battle drums on board the massive flotilla sounded. It was their rallying cry to motivate the violent warriors for their imminent attack. 4,000 years earlier on the other side of the world, the same tympanic rhythm struck mortal terror into the hearts and minds of the victims-to-be. That was because they knew devastation and death was about to befall them. Unfortunately, the first new victims of these highly orchestrated assaults were wholly unprepared to react appropriately or defend themselves. They stood paralyzed and confused while witnessing the dazzling spectacle. The colorful warships landed on the undefended beaches with strategic precision and without resistance or civil protest. Soon the rising curiosity turned to disbelief and abject horror. Murderous slings and arrows pierced the flesh of innocent spectators. Cold realization crept over their previously bemused faces. The chaos unfolding before them wasn't dramatic reenactments of an ancient past or an active movie set. It was a merciless, real invasion and homeland attack. Before it was collectively understood they were under assault by a tribe of seafaring people of unknown origin, thousands lay dead or dying. The hardened mariners raided beach homes and coastal shops for food and items of value to pillage. The element of complete surprise allowed them to avoid many initial casualties, but that edge over modern technology and advanced weapons wouldn't last. Thankfully, word of the coordinated massacre reached the Coast Guard and civil defense authorities. Rapidly, troops were assembled in record time to neutralize the unexpected threat. Navy warships and bombers were summoned from bases all over the country in case there were greater nationwide security implications. National Guard forces locked down the attack points and quickly took back dozens of affected towns along the eastern seaboard. Military jets flew over the wooden boats and sunk them without challenge or return fire. Then Coast Guard crews captured hundreds of the stranded marauders and transported them to a centralized military command center for holding at a special naval base in Richmond. The international news media covered the unbelievable situation in graphic detail for weeks. The combined armed forces had dozens of interpreters among their ranks, but none of them could speak the cryptic tongue. At the time, they didn't realize it hadn't been spoken for more than 2 millennia. In order to determine which nationality the savage attackers were and to assess the potential threat of more invasions being planned, it was necessary to interrogate them and record their statements. Top linguists were called in to facilitate this daunting task. At first, zero progress was made. The rogue prisoners were brutish, feral, and fiercely unyielding. They lacked completely in even the most basic of manners or social graces. It appeared they were either unable or unwilling to cooperate with their government captors. The staff and frustrated language experts struggled to bridge the significant communication gap. They realized they were dealing with something extraordinary, but they couldn't quite put their fingers on exactly what it was. The stocky, pale individuals were strident and obviously unaware of modern life, technology, or society. Top historians were consulted to disprove an uncomfortable thought ruminating among them. The bizarre theory was that the warring mariners of ancient times somehow returned to haunt the coastline of the U.S., but that idea wouldn't sit well with the officials or outraged public frothing for expedient executions. As much as it didn't make sense to the scientists either, it absolutely seemed to be true. The hundreds of enemy combatants in the detainment center belonged to the lost Mediterranean seafaring horde. Convincing the ranking brass and patriotic soldiers of that wouldn't be nearly as easy. I don't know how, nor can I explain the details as of yet, but I believe our attackers are direct descendants of a group of Semitic sea people from the Adriatic. You see, they act like Stone Age savages because they really are directly from the Stone Age. This same group of nomads was credited with causing the late Bronze Age collapse of civilization. They were last known to exist in the transitional time period between the writing of the Old and New Testament books. It's as if they have been frozen in time. Frozen in time? The base commander snorted dismissively. Are you fucking high? They are textbook Middle Eastern terrorists. Just look at them. Listen to me. Whomever these people are, they haven't evolved at the same rate as the rest of the world. Surely you can see that. Even remote desert nomads are aware of modern technology. If this theory is correct, we need to find out where they've resided all this time and how they managed to separate themselves from the rest of the planet. If we can figure out how to communicate with them, we can solve that enigma and also explain why they attacked us. What are you, some kind of moron, Preston? How much are they paying you to waste taxpayers' money on silly sci-fi fantasies? Like this? I'm going to ask that you be removed from the intelligence team. We need to break down these goat-humping marauders immediately so we can find out which hostile enemy of ours they represent. And if more fanatic, evil acts are forthcoming against the American people. I fully understand your abrasive skepticism, Commander. I wouldn't believe what I just told you either, had I not examined the personal effects we seized from them. None of them were carrying cell phones or electronics. Their minimal clothing was handmade with natural source materials and manually woven by prehistoric loom methods. Their teeth are severely worn out and decayed. I witnessed evidence of prior injuries on their bodies which have healed poorly without modern surgery, medicine, or antibiotics. They even defecate in the corner of their cells and drink from the toilet, despite having clean running water, for heaven's sake. They are clearly an inbred culture. Even the most uneducated remote clan of desert people have a septic system, indoor plumbing, and sacred laws against intermarriage these days. And your point is, the supervisor quipped, they killed over 1,000 of our people in a vicious coordinated rampage. Several of them have bitten my guards through the bars like rabid dogs at the pound. It's all I can do to hold myself back from marching them outside against a wall and shooting them. They deserve it, believe me. We're only holding them here until they can officially stand trial and be brought to full justice. If you just do your damn job and find out which enemy they committed this atrocity for, we can return the favor. The captured souls confined to this detainment block have been bottled up somewhere in a time-shielded ignorance vacuum. They know absolutely nothing of modern life or our international enemies. Anyone you hire to replace me will come to the same conclusion. They are Bronze Age aquatic nomads traveling the oceans with their wives and children in tow. Not some nefarious Middle Eastern terrorist network with an acronym plotting against us. Can you name one terrorist organization today that would bring their wives and kids along for the attack? That last question definitely stumped his highly outspoken critic. Perhaps it was the turning point in swaying his mind about an improbable-sounding suggestion being a real possibility. That is the first step in changing opposing viewpoints. Reed offered one final series of thoughts before walking out of the room. Just because I can't prove a theory yet doesn't make it wrong or false. I intend to get to the truth, whatever it is. If a person seeks the truth in good faith, they will find it. You just have to open your eyes to the possibility and not limit yourself before giving it an open mind. I promise you this wasn't traditional terrorism. These seafaring nomads would have been equally as enthusiastic attacking the coastline of Mexico or Canada. We were merely a convenient geographical target at the time. And where exactly is this caveman time capsule which held them back? They're no less primitive than the other backwards fanatics in parts of the world. Did they get sucked into an ocean maelstrom or a big black hole? Perhaps they were abducted by space aliens for intensive anal probing and just recently returned, back to Earth, by a huge flying saucer that could hold them and their wooden ships. Come on, Reed. Spare us the unhelpful horseshit. We need to get this criminal investigation moving. The sarcasm was so thick it could be cut with a knife. In fairness, however, he had no explanations with more believable answers. The actual truth of the matter, as was revealed later, made Ramhurst's smarmy suggestions appear reasonable in comparison. Until a breakthrough could be made in surmounting the considerable language and cultural barrier, alien abductions and falling into a black hole was just as credible. I've been working with one of the more amenable captives. We started with hand gestures first. Slowly he progressed to a handful of words and phrases. It's enough of a connection that we can achieve a basic level of understanding. His name is Uned, and he even taught others in the compound some of the things he learned from us. That's excellent news, Reed. The White House will be happy to hear it. Any progress in determining where they came from? The Pentagon is quite anxious for answers. It was a significant improvement in the level of respect he received compared to his previous encounter with Ramhurst. It was as if some of the puzzling details outlined before eventually made an impact. He almost hated to risk eroding their newfound understanding by circling back to the more controversial aspects of the earlier debate, but it couldn't be avoided any longer. Yes, Commander. I have received an explanation from UNED. Of course, our level of communication is still quite shallow and rudimentary, but I do have some basic answers from him. He hesitated to elaborate further, but it was obvious he'd have to spell out what the prisoner said. Go on, Preston. Tell me, where have these mystery sea people luxuriating in our custody been hiding during the modern historical era? Unedi tells me his people lived within an extensive Mediterranean cave system for untold generations when they were not on pillaging raids. Over 2,000 years ago, his ancestors became trapped within this cavern after a massive landslide sealed the main entrance. After the catastrophe, they were forced to live off available resources within the many passages. Fortunately for them, there were fresh water springs, small, insurmountable openings to the sky above them for ambient light, and also reservoirs of aquatic sea life to harvest. Reed fully expected to witness the commander roll his eyes in disbelief during the initial testimony. To his credit, however, he appeared to be keeping an open mind. Since some time had elapsed since their earlier heated discussion, it definitely aided in helping the unusual possibility to sink in. In addition, the lack of modern weapons seized from them, and their primitive clothing and headdresses helped him accept that they were not part of a modern terror network. Do you remember hearing about a powerful earthquake which occurred around 6 months ago in that region of the world? Oned explained that it opened the mouth of the cave enough for them to finally escape after 2 millennia of imprisonment. They are known amongst themselves as the Sheridan Horde. They were initially comprised of the Danuna, the Chaker, the Peliset, and Shardana tribes. I think they possibly migrated from the western Anatolia region of modern Sardinia more than 5,000 years ago. Later on, groups like the Luka, Shakalish, Ekwesh, Weshesh, Washesh, and Teresh tribes joined their expanding ranks. The commander struggled to take it all in. It was a lot to swallow, even with the overwhelming yet circumstantial evidence to support the fantastical idea. Who would have suspected they were recently escaped Bronze Age marauders? James Ramhurst silently motioned for him to continue with the highly controversial debriefing. They frequently attacked Egypt in those days, as it was considered the richest country and most obvious target. Meanwhile, the Nubians, the Hittites, and the Libyans hired them as bodyguards and mercenaries for their armies. The consensus was, if you couldn't beat them, hire them. Those countries considered Egypt to be their mortal enemy, and since the Sea People, or Shurden Horde, were fierce warriors who could not be defeated, it made sense to use them against Egypt, Assyria, or anyone else they didn't like. It also meant that the Shurdinians were less likely to attack them, since they were employers and allies. Wow. They are living archaeological relics and a social anachronism. The commander marveled. This whole thing is nearly unbelievable and ironic. In a very real way, I was partially right about them being terrorists. They are just the original terror squad. It's not enough we have to defend ourselves against modern threats. Now we have to also deal with ancient hordes of angry Bronze Age marauders who just escaped from a cave time capsule? Sheesh. I suppose our country is the equivalent of ancient Egypt, in terms of relative prosperity for the time, but what in the hell do we do now? On one hand, I feel infinitely safer knowing their attack wasn't an orchestrated threat from an avowed, modern enemy, and that we had no trouble neutralizing them. On the other hand, how can we prepare for something so incredibly rare and genuinely bizarre? I'm at a loss of what we should do with them. I'll tell you this, Commander. No court in the land will convict them since they have been isolated and socially stunted for over 2,000 years. This is a totally unique situation in the history of modern jurisprudence. One thing is for certain. Do not send them to Guantanamo Bay. If they infiltrate and join in with the current extremist detainees there, we'll have a serious mess on our hands for the future. Enjoy next story. Did that ship just launch an entire asteroid, like as a projectile? Did it really just do that? Kajal reached across and swiped a tentacle over the screen to move to the next promo as Nialan choked on their drink. The entire shuttle was packed to the outer bulkheads with passengers, each one more intimidating than the last, and all heading to the same destination. The pair of diminutive Halesti were the most out of place, neither standing nearly a third of the height of any other passenger, and both clad in crisp, clean uniforms of the Halesti Confederacy. What is Ashivara's name have you gotten us? Into Kajal? Be quiet! You're embarrassing us! Nylan held the data pad up, pointing to the vid playing of a soldier in powered armor, firing a rifle that violated at least half a dozen articles of the Stellar War Convention. We are on a shuttle with a bunch of despots, war criminals, and pirates. I'm pretty sure that Holvung over there is Jaden Hera. You know, the psychotic warlord who exterminated an entire star system. Twice. You have to admit, the Golotha are pretty industrious to come back from a system-wide annihilation. Word is they're on the rebound again, Kajal countered with an upraised tentacle. That's beside the damned point, Nyalan hissed. These are mass murderers and genocidal maniacs. You thought we'd be better off with people who cater to them? Ashivara, pardon you. What were you thinking? The shuttle's docking lights began to flash as the mooring clamps took hold. Listen, Kajal snapped. You said you were willing to do anything to stop the war. Anything. We can't compete with the Jurest. We can't. They've literally been grinding our troops under their boots. We need an edge. This is that edge. These people are the best weapons manufacturers in the entire galaxy. Ashivara, bless them. Probably the damned universe. You said you'd do anything? Well, here we are. The shuttle doors opened and the motley assortment of pirates, battle armor-clad warlords, and overly decorated despots filed out as the two Halesti sat in their seats. Nealon just stared at the image of the power armor-clad juggernaut firing his assault rifle loop over and over and over again. The war was so one-sided, the Jurest just seeing the Halesti as another easy conquest. Nealon's vision tunneled, into the graphic of the battle rifle's muzzle flash, repeating over and over again. "I see you're fond of the M68, said a cheerful voice. Nylan looked up, snapping out of his morbid haze, and into the big green eyes of the human woman squatting, down in the aisle in front of him and Kajal. She was easily 3 times their height, most other sapient species were, but she didn't look down on them the way others did. Her big green eyes were level with his own. Strange. I should warn you, I don't know if we can miniaturize that particular model. Several of the proprietary components are rather particular, and I simply can't give you my assurance that we'd be able to produce a model suited towards your size. I can, however, show you a multitude of options which I know can be custom, built to your needs." The human extended her hand. "I'm Emily. I'll be your personal purchasing liaison today. So tell me, what kind of statement do you want to make?" Nylan just blinked in confusion, staring out the outstretched appendage. "I'm sorry, Emily. Nylan is just so new to all of this," Kajal said, grazing a tentacle over Emily's fingers in reciprocation. "Nonsense. We'll make them feel right at home. If you would both just follow me, we'll move through the showroom and up to my office." The human stood and towered over the two Halesti, neither being able to even see her face without craning their heads back to look straight up. Regardless, Emily seemed to take care to make sure to speak loudly and project enough that both Halesti could hear her clearly. She even kept pace with them, every 5 Halesti steps being only one human one. As they emerged from the docking ramp onto the station's showroom floor, Neelan's 4 eyes went wide. Before them was a myriad of booths and displays showing the latest in human-manufactured arms, ships, guns, cannons, drones, armor, anything and everything someone looking to do war could wish for. It was far more professional than Nylan had been expecting, the First Minister expecting a dimly lit alley but being presented with a brightly lit show floor. "You asked about what statement we want to make?" Nylan asked as they strolled by kiosk advertising battle armor with several prominent warlords gathered around it. "Exactly," Emily replied. "You see, most think Terrans just sell weapons. In reality, we sell statements." Emily stopped and crouched down again, gesturing to the various booths before them. "Everything we offer here is a statement to your enemy. A statement that says, we are not messing around. Something that says, take us seriously or else. We don't sell arms, First Minister. We sell statements and ideals." The walk to Emily's office took 3 times as long as it would normally, but she didn't seem to mind. She knew the Halesti were buying. It was just a matter of how much. When they finally reached her office, she already had seats prepared. For the Halesti, her own floor opening to drop her low enough to almost look the pair in the eyes. A pre-prepared table with cups and servingware rotated out for the pair of Halesti to pour their own drinks. "So," Emily said, as her own chair sank into the floor to bring her as close to eye level with the Halesti as it could. "What sort of statement are you looking to make?" Nylan glanced at Kajal, then back at Emily. "Our people are war with a race that's—" Emily held up her hand, making Nylan stop mid-sentence. "What is it you want to tell the Jurest?" Nylan swallowed hard as he glanced at Kajal, then back to Emily, to leave us alone. Emily smiled and nodded, reaching for a data pad and tapping a few times. "And how firm do you want that message to be? Just planetary, or void-bound as well? I mean, the Jurest are literally murdering our people by the millions, so—" Kajan elbowed Nylan, who returned the gesture with a glare of annoyance. "Miss Emily," Nylan said, "can you explain to me—" He choked at little on. The words in hesitation but powered through. "Can you explain to me how all of this is legal?" The minuscule Halesti gestured to the holopads arrayed on the table and the ads on the walls. 6 of the last 13 adverts I've seen contain weapons that violate the war-making accords, 3 of them being considered actual war crimes if they're deployed, Nylan said, almost apologetically. "My people are in a dire situation. Our species faces enslavement at best and extermination at worst, but if we deploy weapons that will bring the Galactic Council down on our heads, even if, in Ashivara's sacred name, we win." Kajal winced and pinched their brow between their 4 wincing eyes. "Ashivara, damn you, Nylan," Kajal hissed before Emily smiled and lifted a hand in a gesture of peace to the pair. "This isn't an uncommon question, Third Minister Kajal. Neither I nor my people take offense, Emily said to Kajael before turning to the First Minister. First Minister Nealon, may I simply address you as Nealon? The First Minister nodded. Nealon, Emily continued with a smile. Humanity is, as you know, considered a pariah race by the Council. We aren't allowed legal territorial claims, we're given no voice on the Council. Because of this, we're left out in the proverbial cold, diplomatically speaking. However, we've found a way to turn this into an advantage. The human gestured to the same adverts that Nealon had pointed out. You see, being a pariah race, we're not bound by Council law. None of it. This means we can produce and sell what we want, since the Council's rigid doctrine only applies to the civilized species that fall under its purview. As we exist outside Council law, they cannot denounce our practices, as if they did would grant us legitimacy. The Council, as it stands, wants nothing more than to keep us in the shadows as our weapons, ships, armor, and soldiers help fuel the wars between Council races. I've gotten the Grand Premier of the Council drunk off both her asses. I've had the Defense Secretary crying into my shoulder, so let me ask you who your arms dealer is and why you chose them. Nealon may have well been making late 20th century dial-up noises for the expression he gave her. We have no arms dealer, Kajael said. Our arms are, and always have been, manufactured in Empire. Oh, well, no wonder. You've never had buying options before, Emily said. First Minister Nealon, I understand wanting to handle things in-house, but the fact of the matter is that your enemies are outsourcing their arms procurement pipeline, which is giving them a distinct tactical advantage. The Jurest are 9 meters tall, Nealon said. They could attack us with sticks, and our military would still be outclassed. All the more reason to seek an outside vendor. So, tell me, Nealon, what's a higher priority to you? Saving credits, saving lives, or inflicting maximum casualties? The fog lifted from the First Minister. Saving lives, of course. Too many of our people have died already. Emily nodded in solemn agreement. It's true, for every single Jurest casualty, how many Halesti must die? My agents are putting it at roughly 100 to 1. Is that a blood price you want to keep paying? Nealon shook his head. No! No more Halesti should have to die! The Terran slid a piece of paper across the table to him. Now, I shouldn't be showing you this, but the Githyanki offensive recently failed and they aren't able to collect on a suite of drones they'd purchased from us. It's a full suite. Void, Atmo, and Land. Since they're technically pre-owned, I can't sell them at full price, Emily said, flipping the page over to let the Halesti look over the specs. The beautiful thing about drones is that they don't care about the size of the operator. We can outfit the Halesti with 6 more suites like this, 12 full battalions, and I'm pretty sure if you gave me a commitment, I could call purchasing to match this discounted price for the entire purchase. Nealon swallowed, glancing over to Kajael, who was just nodding slowly. That, plus the sus 6 suites, at the discounted price, Nealon said, trying to sound stern. No more. No fees, O, or T taxes. Flat rate. Emily feigned appall. I suppose I can pitch that to my higher-ups, First Minister. It's a hard bargain, but I'll be on your side through the whole endeavor. Why don't you two browse the catalog while I reach out to my team and see how we can make this happen? The trade negotiation lasted 8.5 standard hours, during which time the Halesti First and Third Ministers had ordered an additional 2 battalions, 4 armored corps, and a Titan, Class War Strider. Security footage would show the pair stumbling out of Liason Emily's office, singing and chanting drunkenly about the glory of the Halesti and being ushered back onto a shuttle. Emily? Came over the internal comms. The Liason sipped her scotch, feet on her desk, a cigar smoldering between her fingers before answering. Yes? She crooned sweetly. You're the best. I know, she hummed, looking at the 2.5 billion trade guilder spike in her projections. Oh, I know. She glanced to her terminal and tapped the key for her assistant. Kyle, darling? Spike the Jurest purchase prices by 75% this month, scale up to 150 over the next 3 months. We have a new front runner. Yes, mistress, a voice came from the comm. I do so hate bullies, Emily said, sipping her scotch again. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.